Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, you're the one who always pounds into our brain like, well, if you're gonna sing for her, try to learn to sing good.
Are we on? Oh, thank you. All right. Can I have a copy of the song sheet? You have more than. Jaima. We printed a pile, right? So, 80 has. Jaima. We've missed you. Jaima. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sitaram. Are we good? You want to come closer? You're okay. We'll get. I guess it's okay.
Boys, closer, he said.
Jaima. Hari Om. Om Mangalam Gurudevaya Devyamatriksha Mangalam Bhakta Vrindevya Sarvalokaya Mangalam Om Stapakaya Chadharmasya Sarvadharma Sarupini Avatar Vrishta Ramakrishnaya Mangalam Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Deva Maheshwara Guru Deva Param Brahman Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Om Sarashiva Samarambam Shankaracharam Ajamam Ashmarachara Prayantam Vande Gurum Param Om Bhadrakali Namo Nityam Saraswati Namo Namaha Veda Viranga Vedanta Vejastana Evacha Sri Ganesha Shara Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om Jaima. So continuing our discussion on the Sri Kali Sahasranāma Stotram, the 1,000 names of Goddess Kali. And last week, 2 weeks ago, or whenever it was, 2 meetings ago, I should just say that, 2 meetings ago, we dealt with a bunch of scary names, right? Fierce names. Not fierce, scary. They're scary forms of Ma. These are just very fierce names. A few of them are on the list here on verse 41. Bhīmā, bhayānakā, bhīmā-nādinī, bhīḥ. Actually, all those bhī, bha. The bhī is fierce, right? Scary, fierce, ferocious, right? Terrible. Like this. So she who is fierce, she who causes fear. Of course, we interpret that could be causing fear amongst the demons, but also sometimes devotees can get scared of her too, right? Bhīmā-nādinī, she whose sound is fierce, right? And so this name will, I think, be counter-positioned or counterpointed with a name coming up in the next verse. Bhīḥ, fears, and then it switched to more into I think more benign type names. Prabhāvatī, she who is the light of the dawn, like this, right? Vāgīśvarī, we spent a lot of time on Vāgīśvarī, the goddess of vibration, and that name I think is setting up for this cluster of names also. We mentioned that we spent a little bit of time about certain aspects of Saraswati. There's been many names, even the word Saraswati has come 4 or 5 times, right? So we've had opportunity to talk about Saraswati a lot. We again gave a swipe at Saraswati last week, and then we also talked a few weeks ago about the difference between Saumya and Raudra deities, fierce deities, and the peaceful deities, and some of those, because these 2 verses, a bunch of fierce names and then a bunch of gentler names, right? So we talked about that. So last week, I think, where did we end last week? Anybody remember?
Yajña-kartrī.
Oh, we hadn't got the yajña-kartrī yet, right? So we did Yamuna, I think, right? We talked about the Yamuna River and some of her stories of her as a goddess, who is she? Anybody remember?
The sister
Of?
Yama.
Sister of Yama. Yama and Yamuna. They're both the children of Surya. Right, and so we talked about Yamuna, Shri Vāgīśvarī, which is seen as perhaps a name for Saraswati, Shri, the name for Lakshmi, and then Yamuna. And so I guess now we're on name. Where are the last 2 names? Yajña-kartrī and yajuḥ-priyā. Right. So that's 337. Name 337. Let me find my notes for 337. So yajña-kartrī. So looking at other translations, Satyananda's translations describes as mother of yajña, a yajña of sacrifice, right? But actually, kartrī means, I mean, you could say mother is the cause of something. You could say the mother of everything is a cause of something. So in that sense, and of course, this is, you can put mother in front of every name here, the mother who is this or something like that, right? But I think what it actually means. So this is a shared, many times there's shared names in the Kali Sahasranāma with other Sahasranāmas. The most common, the most famous Sahasranāma for the Devi that many of us know is a Lita Sahasranāma. So there is a name towards the end, Lita Sahasranāma 882. The same name, yajña-kartrī is the same name as there. And it comes in a cluster, and also mentions a few aspects of this, so we'll go back to Lita Sahasranāma. So anyway, yajña, my tongue's not going to do it today, kartrī. I realize I didn't have, sorry. Maybe that's, yeah. Usually I forgot, I had my coffee early and I forgot to have my strong cup of coffee. The anime.
Do you want water or coffee?
Is there coffee left in the thing?
There is.
There is. You can, yeah, thank you. It's been we have a lot going on today. Maybe it's yes. I was saying I learned from a family member, right? I have Lebanese part of my family, and that we have a new member of our Lebanese part of our family. And by marriage, we have Lebanese part of our family who got married recently to another. And I was explaining my weakness of coffee. He says, "No, Swami, this is great, right? This was brought by the Turks for the sake of animating prayer and discussion. They drink it at night to animate a sacred study and zikr and chanting like this. Like, oh, this is good. I now have good, so I can feel slightly better about my love for coffee and late night coffee especially. You know. But if I don't drink late night coffee often, but if you need to stay up to study, that's where my bad coffee habit came. Late at night studying complete works of Vivekananda. That was my late night reading started. So luckily it's coming. So yajña with coffee I can pronounce better. That's the point. Kartrī. Right. So yajña-kartrī. So we have to think what yajña is, and so what is yajña? Yajña is a word for yajña is a common English word is sacrifice, right? But it's not. It's like we say, it's a big sacrifice to do this, right? You know, so it's not that. I mean, it can't. I mean, there's words have so much spread out meaning, something like. But this is specifically a ritual act of sacrifice. Right, so it's referring to Vedic sacrifice specifically. The yajña is the quintessential Vedic rite and the Vedic form of worship. When we think of Vedic worship, when we think of like Vedic puja, or even puja is not a Vedic, it's a post-Vedic way of worship, right? Worship in it seems the primary method of ritual worship is a yajña, right? So in the what is the purpose of yajña? What is yajña for? And as traditions became maybe more theistic or more monotheistic, it's a dangerous word to use in Hinduism, right? But if you're something like individually, devotionally monotheistic, right? Even if that idea of theism is that of like an impersonal Brahman, which we have in the Upanishads, there's some reality that the Vedas reveal and that comes from that the Vedas come from and that the Vedas reveal, right? So that's Brahman, and in other traditions, later traditions, that gets identified with the deity being worshipped. So a very common thing in the Gita is that I am sacrifice, Vishnu is sacrifice, Krishna is sacrifice. So very often yajña itself is seen as Vishnu. Vishnu is seen as yajña. Right, so the purpose, the function of yajña is to sacrifice to Vishnu, right? and the right, the very right itself is Vishnu, right? We have that famous verse, we chant it, the one verse of the Gita everybody seems to know, right? The only verse we know is the one we chant before eating, right?
Yeah.
Who told me, it may have been Swami Bhajanananda may have told this story of Swami Arupeshananda. I think, please forgive me, people watching, if I don't think they're watching, but if in case it gets to them. But I think this way, the story that Swami Arupeshananda, Western Swamiji, attached out of the Hollywood Center, wonderful Swamiji. He was in India, so the story goes, and some other sadhu, like a little challenging when we as white honky sadhus, we sometimes get challenged. We could ask something in Sanskrit or in Hindi or something like that to see if we can answer. And he was asked do you know the Gita, right? And so he I don't know Swamiji's knowledge of Sanskrit. I don't know. He's a PhD level scientist. Well, I don't know who his knowledge of Sanskrit is, right? But so he quoted this Brahmadapanam Brahmahavir, this verse like that, and he was like, "Oh, Baba, he knows that. He knows the Gita." It was the one verse we all know. That was kind of funny, though. So Brahmadapanam Brahmahavir Brahmagnu Brahman. So Brahman is the ritual. Brahman is the sacrifice. Brahman is the one who offers into the sacrifice. One who sees sacrifice. I may be missing one or two of these points. One who sees, he alone realizes Brahman, right? So their ritual is Brahman, right? And in the Gita also Krishna is Brahman, is the object of ritual. And the Srimad Bhagavatam, that's made again and again clear that I am yajña, and I am it's myself yajña, and I am the object of yajña, right? And then the very beautiful I'm forgetting which conversation, it was Prithu Maharaj, I think. Not Prithu Maharaj. Who was the first sadhu? The first. No, even before. Rishabha. Rishabha's instruction to his son before he leaves, right? He mentions. He says Vishnu, I believe, right? He says that I am yajña. Vishnu says I am yajña, right? And better. Then he says a very interesting sign. Better than pouring ghee into the fire, you put food into the mouth of the holy. That is yajña, right? So then he gets identified with sadhus and the feeding of sadhus, feeding of holy people. So there's lots of connection like that. So whatever yajña is, it's a form of worship in the Vedic tradition. Even now we think of there's some symbolic remnants of Vedic worship in I say post-Vedic Hindu. That's not a right thing to say either, because Hinduism itself comes from the Vedas in so many ways, right? But in temples and in puja and in tantra and in bhakti, there's still remnants of it through the havans, there's symbolic like that, but it's considerably different, right? And if you've everybody attended a proper Vedic rite, like Ati Rudram or something like this, it's quite, it's only a fraction of what a proper Vedic rite would have been, but it's still quite something to hear and to watch and to witness. So, Thank you. Plenty hot. Thank you. This will help. Get me. It's already working. Thank you to the Sufis and Turkish Sufis. Come on. So, in the Gita, along with this mention of sacrifice and identification of sacrifice, right? All aspects of sacrifice as non-different from Brahman or as Brahman, or in the beginning, I think in maybe in the third chapter, I think in the Gita, if I remember properly, which I may not be, it mentions that sacrifice is what is the milch cow, I think is the term used. Is that the third chapter? The milch, this is the cow of your cow of plenty, right? By sacrifice, you should thrive. We should thrive by sacrificing to the gods and getting the blessings of the gods. This is the economy set up at the beginning of time, so Krishna says, right? And and then it says very strong two verses which I think are really interesting, right? And they're used a lot. It says that after sacrifice, the leftover, the remnant of sacrifice, we're allowed to take the remnants of sacrifice, right? And so one who eats the remnant without first sacrificing, that person is considered a thief, right? Because what they're eating or what they're using should have been given to somebody else. And so if you eat something belongs to somebody else, you're stealing. And stealing, in most religions, including ours, is considered a sin, right? So one is a sinner, and then he says and then that plate of food is seen as a plate of sin, right? Because it's stolen, something stolen, right? So there's a great line Srila Prabhupada uses in his commentary of these verses. He was famous for this because he used that to describe the offering of food, eating the prasadam, a sacramental life where everything's offered to God, and taking the remnants of prasadam of, right? He says, and how can one be happy if one is both a sinner and a thief? That's the question, right? And he says, practically speaking, it's not possible, right? Something like that, right? I forget the exact, but I remember the how can one be happy, that part I remember. It hit me strong when I first read it, right? Because that's the challenge, right? So, we think, and the devotional way of doing it, we offer our food, like today, already food will have been here, maybe food will come. We offer it, and then we distribute it we take it as prasadam, right? That's a development, I think, in the tradition. Seems to be an older understanding of sacrifice is that you give something and then you give it to the fire and you don't get prasad back. Right, we put it in the plate. I had a comic from a little book called God is Cool. It's a little book of comics, religious comic, funny kind of Hindu religious comics, right? And it has somebody offering something to Ganesha, right? And then walking away, and the plate is with a string to his foot. And when he walks back, he drags it back. We offer it, and then we get it, right? We're the ones who take it, right? Ganesha doesn't get anything, right? We believe, he takes the devotion, he takes like this, right? But the old way you throw it in the fire, it's gone. So what's the remnant of sacrifice? It's not the ash, right? It's what's left over after you've sacrificed, after you spent the money. And whatever was meant to be given to the gods and to the others to whom we sacrifice, whatever is left, that is yours to use. A little bit, not exactly tithing, but I think tithing has a little bit of a flavor of this. I've seen TV programs where the preacher says that if you're not tithing, you're stealing from God. Like this type of thing. It's a modern version of it. So. In traditional commentaries of these verses in the Gita, it mentions what sacrifice is meant. What sacrifice is meant here, most likely meant here. Neem Karoli Baba also mentioned in commenting, being questioned about these verses. He also mentioned the pancha yajna, the fivefold sacrifice. That human beings, by the very fact that here we are as human beings, are required to pay five. We have 5 debts. Right, 5 debts. One is called Brahma Yajna, Deva Yajna, Manusha Yajna, Priti Yajna, and Bhuta Yajna. And some of these have varieties of names, right? So Brahma Yajna is for the devas, for the gods, right? And says in the Deva world they cannot farm, they cannot we feed the gods by sacrificing. And what do? They give rain. They give sun, they give air, they give the elements, right? This is an ancient idea of the gods, right? And so we feed the gods, they send rain and sun and wind, and we get food. And then from that we feed the gods. And so there's a economy, an ecology from this, right? We have a Guru Bhai named Ramachandra, a very colorful, wonderful friend, and he one time challenged. He says that the gods are dependent upon if it wasn't for the Brahmins, he's a very ritually expert, self-conscious Brahmin by his personality type, right? He said we're better than the gods. They're useless without us. If we don't feed them, they'll starve, right? There's we have all control over them. He's being slightly funny. and his position, but his idea that the gods cannot eat without us. So if we take what they've given, the bounty from which they've given us, and we don't feed them in response, then what will happen? That start is it's disrespectful on our side, and also they'll stop giving rain, they stop sending sun. So this is a view. There's Swami Lakshmanju, the great Kashmiri saint. He says that when we do yajna, we're feeding the sun. And the sun sends the appropriate messages to the upper worlds, right? And they make arrangements to what comes down. So when he was here, when Usha met him, 91 or something, 1991, something like that, right? There was a big drought in Los Angeles. Horrible. I mean, we've been in a drought for years, but this is one of the really bad fires, like one of these horrible fire seasons. And he said, we need to do yajna. He said, this is due to, the reason it's not raining here is due to mismanagement in the upper worlds, right? And it's being mismanaged because the supply line has been broken, right? So we shall do a big yajna. And they went to the fire department to get a permit to light a big ritual fire during a drought, right? And you were not allowed to have a barbecue at that time, one of these no burn orders, right? He says, no, we're doing this in order to bring rain. So they stepped up. They needed rain, you know? So they allowed him to do, and it did rain after. I don't know if the drought was finished, but it did rain by the end of the sacrifice, after the big yajna they did to perform. So Brahma Yajna is feeding, is honoring the devas and so in devotional life, that means daily worship, Devi Puja, visiting temples, donating to temples, whatever the rituals are to the gods, right? To God and the gods, right? Then actually, that's Deva. I'm getting a little mixed because, like I said, these have different names. I memorize them using different names. So that's Deva Yajna, the worship of the gods, right? Brahma Yajna, which is first on my list, that is worship of the. Here it's in my lexicon. That's the Rishi Yajna. We call it Rishi Yajna. In my list here, I wrote Brahma Yajna for the Brahman. It means the rishis, right? The ancient sages, ancient and modern sages. So we honor the sages. What do we get from them? We get this knowledge. We get the scriptures. We get our mantras. We get our guru lines. We get our culture. We get culture, right? If you live in a really traditional sacred culture, you get your culture itself, right? Maybe not in like this. And so the way we honor them is, of course, by following their teachings, by studying their teachings, right? By supporting institutions that honor them and like that, and also by distributing their teachings. So it's also like distribution of scriptures and things like that. It's in the category of Brahma Yajna. Manusya Yajna, that means humans, or human. Manusya means humans. So we have a duty to other people also, right? You've given me very nice coffee. It was very high quality milk, right? So we bought that. We paid for these. We didn't just go into the store and take it, right? Because if we do that, we could do that. I mean, even if we may or may not get caught doing it, but that would be considered stealing because somebody. There's so many things that happen before milk comes into our kitchen, or coffee arrives we get coffee from Austria. The coffee themed talk. All my examples of coffee today. Coffee comes from we get it from Austria, right? So the pickers, I mean, every state. You can imagine how many people go into making something simple as a cup of coffee that we get at a store here, right? So you have to honor that by paying properly for that. If you don't do that, you're a thief, and people are very much required. Right. In that same cup of coffee, we use water from our tap, right? If there wasn't people, there's a lot goes into keeping our water going. So we also pay for our water, right? It's part of it, right? I mean, we can argue that we're paying too much, but we have to pay for the water. So Manusya Yajna is also paying properly for services and goods that we're getting, but we're getting much for which we're not paying for. Right, so many things we're being supported in so many ways, right? we're living on the work of many people that we're not paying. Right? We're living on the charity of thousands of people, right? That we're not conscious of. So part of that is not just paying properly for goods and services, right? But also supporting those, just like we're being supported in unseen ways, we should also support. So that's usually the justification for charity, for service of those who are suffering, or for food, or for education. Those type of charitable type of things are in the required sacrifice, right? Pitri-yajna is for the ancestors, and this is done by certain rites at the time of death, and then yearly rites on the anniversary of their death, during certain times of the year. We do during this Shraddha Paksha and the like, the Shraddha rites, where we're feeding the ancestors, because from them, of course, we get our culture, we get our coffee, we get our coffee. I was like, now it's getting a little bit weird. That's all right. Further with a joke. Now it's all But also, I get my love for coffee from my mom and dad. It was in my bottle. So we get our culture, we get our language from our ancestors, and in many traditional cultures, knowledge and respect and connection and consciousness and even veneration and worship of the ancestors is really important. In Western culture, that's become less and less, for sure, right? So that's important, and we also do that by living up. By making them proud by how we live our life, right? Also, our living connection to our ancestors are our living parents. So we have to. So that's all is service to our parents. Appropriate service to our parents is also part of the worship of the ancestors. And then, from a yogic perspective, right, is that by our own spiritual practice and spiritual liberation, we'll liberate our ancestors. So it says. It says that if you attain, this is my advertisement for liberation. If you attain liberation. You may not want to attain liberation. You may not have a strong desire for liberation. But if you have a strong desire to serve your ancestors, this would be a good one, right? Because by your liberation, it says that 10 generations, actually 11 generations are liberated when one person is liberated. That means it's a symbolic number, 10 before and 10 after, and then you're the 11th generation, right? This obviously it's an encouraging number, maybe not a mathematical certainty, right? The idea that this is the best way to serve. So some people, that's a justification. Some people like myself who leave the normal family life and become monks or something like this. And people say, well, you're not serving your parents like this. No, we're serving our parents. We're liberate our whole line. We're trying to liberate our whole line, right? And families that have liberated beings in them, their whole line shines differently. There is something to it. There seems to be something to it. So honoring the ancestors. And then there's Bhuta Yajna. Bhuta here means living beings, right? If we didn't have ants, we would probably all die. We didn't have bees. Modern society couldn't. Cities couldn't run. We couldn't generate enough food, right? So there's so many. We're indebted to mosquitoes, right? And the birds that eat mosquitoes. We're indebted to all these things, right? And the part of Bhuta Yajna is care for. And sacrifice for, spending money for animals and other nature preserves, goshalas, protecting cows. We get so much from cows. What happens when they get old, right? And in many cultures, they become food and leather when they get old, right? Rather than, these are our mother, we should take care of them. This is the very Indian ideal of go seva, go mata seva. And you'll see I don't see it as much anymore. I think this is Kali Yuga. We're no longer doing sacrifice the same way. But I've seen before, little old ladies, part of their meal to go out and give some rice to feed ants and mice outside. There's even I see in certain high culture, you'll see high culture, like I'm talking like sadhu culture and old traditional families like that. Even from the plate of food, they first make a little bit, and they put a little bit of rice, and then they put it to the side. And later this gets, so even a little part of their every meal gets fed to some animals and birds outside. This is Bhuta Yajna. So this is a very traditional understanding of practical yajna. The big fire swahas, that is for the devas, right? But then what about people? What about our ancestors? What about the rishis? And what about other beings, right? So if we're responsible for all of them, and that means we have to spend a portion, an appropriate portion of our time, energy, finances, goods for their satisfaction, right? Then what's left, that's the remnant of sacrifice, not just the ash or the prasadam that gets off the plate or something. That's what's left. So after doing your duty, then your money, to use a type of thing, or your food or your like that is considered pure. That is, and for your own enjoyment, appropriate according to the tradition that gives us this 5 sacrifice tradition, right? All right. So all that's important. That's a very Vedic understanding of life. Krishna also says that it's by this principle of sacrificing to these 5 that this is the way the world is supposed to run, and we're supposed to thrive in that world, mutually worshiping and sacrificing and feeding all these categories. We ourselves will be benefited, and we will keep getting what we need, and we'll ourselves thrive. Everyone should prosper by this method. So that's yajna, a swipe of yajna. Well, there'll be other times we can talk about it, right? But here, yajña-kartrī, she's the doer of sacrifice. So not only she sacrifice, or she authorizes sacrifice, or like that, she's the one that does sacrifice. It's very important. In that name, in the Sahasranāma 882, where this name is there, the very next name says she's yajamana. Yajamana is related, so yajña-kartrī is the one who does sacrifice, and yajamana is the one who sponsors sacrifice. That's the right word? Director or sponsor, not patron, maybe patron. I guess like when we have like a patron or something, somebody who sponsors it and in these big elaborate sacrifices, there's a priest who's doing the sacrifice, and the yajamana is the one for whom it's being done. Of course, it's being done for the god, but I mean, there's the person who sponsors it, the beneficiary. Right, so it's like if I do a sacrifice, like the Sankalpa mentions my name for the benefit of his long health, from Bhajanananda's long life and good health and long residence in heaven and the destruction of all of his enemies. In case you want to pray, these are a good list for me. Whatever it is, right? These are the whatever the intention is, or there's somebody who's paying for it, or for whom it's supposed to be the beneficiary for it. So it's both the sponsor, the one who's doing it, who's having it done, maybe not the one who's having it done, and who's supposed to be the beneficiary of it, right? So she says, we're saying this about her. Kali, right, is the one who she's the doer of sacrifice, and she's the beneficiary of sacrifice, the one for whom it's done, and who will benefit from it. So. So, if we think about this, we're just describing something about this name, but we can think. I was thinking. A question came to me, is that who is a doer, right? And if sacrifice is everything in this world is based upon sacrifice, right? That means the one who does the kartrī of sacrifice is the one who does everything. Also in the Gita, in the Purusha Sukta, the supreme person is sacrificed to become. Sacrifice is the way the world is conceptualized in much of the ancient Indic way of thinking, right? So, who's doing it, right? Who's causing it to be done, and for whose benefit is it being done, right? These two names, yajña-kartrī and yajamana, so. Who is a doer? So she's the doer. She's the kartrī. And Thakur uses this language that I'm not the doer. You are the mother. Kali is the doer. You are the doer, right? So this is a way of saying that in a very Vedic way, right? Using Vedic imagery. So it these 2-3 names use strong Vedic. These are There's many names in the Kali Sahasranāma that go very far from normal mainstream the Vedic world. These are claiming the mainstream Vedic world, that she is sacrifice. She's the one that's doing it, and it's for her, right? This is very important. Next name. What's the next name? Yajuḥ-priyā. Yajuḥ-priyā. Yajña-kartrī, yajuḥ-priyā. looking at two, I mentioned I have two translations of this text is not universally available in many translations. I have, hopefully there's more than two. I have two, right? One by Swami Satyananda and one, I wrote her name down, I forget, I mentioned her name, I mean I had it on my desk this morning, but I should mention, it's disrespectful to talk about somebody without their name. I lost it. Anyways, I shall. Probably on the desk. It's just it's a torn up. The book was out of. It's a small book and the cover is very bad.
You've said
It's
it
not
every class.
Yeah, I know, but it's
I
just
know.
you want to be. You should never quote somebody without quoting them. It's like somebody said
You're like,
a long time ago.
this isn't me.
But anyways, the point is they've given two different translations of this name, right? Swami Satyananda says that she who is, he gives us a strain, she who is beloved of the union or lover of Yajur-Veda, right? So something to do with Yajur, with the, so here, yajuḥ-priyā, it comes from Yajur-Veda. She's dear, I would say, if we think Yajur means Yajur-Veda, she's the one who loves or is dear to Yajur-Veda. Thank you. Prem-lata paliwal. Thank you. So she gives, I think it's her, it sounds like a female name. She gives a translation, is she who, the mother who is something to do with sacrifice. So the mother who is beloved of sacrifice. So one is translating yajuḥ-priyā, yajur as the Yajur-Veda, and the other is translating yajur as sacrifice. So I think I think both of them are correct, right? Because Yajur-Veda comes from yajuḥ, right? Yajur-Veda is the Veda of sacrifice. It's a sacrificial Veda. It's the same word, right? So it's actually a very good. I think it's very clever here. If we're trying to find poetry in a list of names without any grammar, right? Just the way the names are put together, because it will tie in the names coming shortly in a moment. Like so what is first we'll take Yajur-Veda. What is the Yajur-Veda? Yajur-Veda comes from this word that is sacrifice. So it is a very old. These are some of the oldest written. I mean, the very old written literature, but very old oral literature. Rig-Veda is older. Yajur-Veda is right there. Very very ancient text, and it deals with sacrifice. Right, it's full of the prose of sacrifice, the mantras. It deals with the mantras of sacrifice and the use of the mantras of sacrifice. Right. I wrote here the compilation of ritual offering formulas. These are called mantras, right? Right, that are said by the priest. Right. So Yajur is the Yajur-Veda, which are these mantras for sacrifice, and Yajur means sacrifice, right? So Yajur is worship. Sacrifice here means worship, and it's the mantras of worship, right? So both these things, if the worship itself, understood in the Vedic with the Vedic language, and the mantras. The formulas of worship, the mantras of worship. If it's both of those things, or either one of those things, she loves these things. These are beloved to her. These are priyā, right? And so if we think somebody is priyā is beloved, somebody who loves something. It also has a meaning if you love something, that means you enjoy that thing. So it has a secondary meaning in many of our devotional poetry. It's used in our prayers, like we use priya is a very common word, and it often means Radha Priya is the name for Krishna, right? He's a lover of Radha, right? But he's also the enjoyer of Radha. It's similar to Radha Raman or that type of idea. So we think of okay, you could say, oh, Ma, goddess Kali. So here it is like like many of the verses show Kali as a deity that is also outside the Vedic tradition, in tribal traditions, in tantric traditions, and all kinds of different lineages. But here it's like she also loves the Vedas. She loves sacrifice, right? But also that's beloved to her. But if she is the enjoyer of this, so the enjoyer has a couple of meanings. If you do something for me and I enjoy it, that means that like, oh, I'm getting pleasure from it. But it also means I'm the one for whom it's being done. Right? If I'm the enjoyer of something, then I'm the one for whom it's being done. Or if you're the enjoyer, something like this, right? Right. So why do sacrifice? So I need a little bit some coffee to untangle my brain here. Why do Vedic? So if yajña means Vedic sacrifice, fine. If yajña means the mantras, the chanting of Vedic mantras, great. Why would one do Vedic sacrifice, and why would one chant Vedic mantras, right? It's to get, if it could be for some benefit, right? So there's some benefit from it, right? Or it can be also done for out of devotion, right? If it's to get benefit, then she grants. If I'm doing some sacrifice, right, and I want to get some, like this is almost stereotypical, to go to heaven or to get rain. I mean, these are almost trite way of summarizing. Almost. It's so trite, almost disrespectful to the Vedic tradition, which is a very complicated thing. But let's just say, for the sake of really simplistic, we do sacrifice in order to go to heaven or get rain, right? So if it's to please her, then by pleasing her, she'll bless us with heaven or rain. That's one way of thinking of it. It's to please her. She likes this, so we'll please her, and then we'll do what she likes, and then she'll grant us heaven or rain or whatever we want, our children or whatever like this. So we can do like that. And the other thing is also to please her, not to get the thing, just out of devotion. She likes this, so I do it. She likes sacrifice, so we sacrifice. She likes mantras, so we chant them. Right? So in that sense, I'm trying to bring out these two meanings of priya. Right? Either way, whether we're doing it for ourselves to get some benefit, sakama type puja or karma, or we're doing it just out of devotion, right? It's still have to please her. Maybe that's the point. So, in the last thing we could ask, who is the doer? She is the doer. Here we can ask, who is the enjoyer, right? So, actually, and a big theme Sri Ramakrishna stresses that the Divine Mother is both the doer and the enjoyer of everything, right? So, what time is it?
6:21.
Okay, keep going a little bit further. Let's go another link into it. She is the doer of sacrifice, yajña-kartrī. She is beloved. She loves sacrifice, or the enjoyer of sacrifice, yajña-priyā, or the lover and of the Yajurveda. So the next name mentions another set of Vedas, right? It says it's a long, wonderful, complicated ṛk-sāmātharva-nilayā. Right, so rik here means I put a dash in there to split it. It would be rig Veda, and the way it's combined becomes a K, right? So it's a Rig Veda. I didn't separate it for the sake of keep the word right. Ṛk-sāmā-Veda. It's the Rig Veda, the Sama Veda, and the Atharva Veda. So I've mentioned three Vedas, right? And usually when you mention three Vedas, you say Rik, Sama, and Yajur and Sama. Atharva Veda is usually the one that was added later, most likely. It's not in the same category of these three. So the fact that he mentioned, by mentioning three Vedas, are mentioning that she who dwells in this Nilayā, she who dwells in the Rig Veda, the Sama Veda, and the Atharva Veda, it's a weird thing to say, right? To mention these and not mention Yajur Veda, because the Yajur Veda was just mentioned, right? So this is, I think, that name Yajña-kartrī is poetic in a certain. Yajuḥ-priyā is a poetic. Yajuḥ-priyā is that it links yajña with the four Vedas. It's a nice link that she is yajña and all four Vedas. So it's double meaning or something like that, right? Right. Where are we here? So she dwells in Rig Veda, Sama Veda, Atharva Veda, and apparently, most likely, Yajur-Veda, right? And in the sacrifices revealed in these 4 Vedas. So that's again claiming that she's Vedic, right? Which is a claim of, that's a developed claim of the Mahadevi tradition we keep mentioning, right? That this goddess is also the universal goddess. She's the goddess who's all other goddesses. She's a goddess who's all gods and their shaktis, right? She's and she's also the Vedic goddess, right? And so we have to think: are there Vedic goddesses? There are, right? The goddesses are not strong in in classical Vedic literature, and we have to assume he means here it's meant classical because it's mentioning 4 Vedas by name, not just like the Hindu Vedic Indic tradition that we call the Vedic or something like that. It means very specifically, right? So, is the goddess to be found in the Vedas? There are goddesses mentioned in the Vedas, right? The majority of the hymns, if we think of hymns to goddesses, they're in the minority for sure. The gods are, it seems, what we have of the Vedic hymns to understand the Vedic and the importance of the Vedic pantheon, right? It's mostly male deities, right? But there are some exceptions, and some big exceptions. And we could think, those exceptions came later, and that could be. I mean, scholars are still analyzing the dates and things like that, if we want to think of it this way, right? But the very famous, if you think of like, where is the Devi in the Vedas? Well, there's a Shuktam called Devi Shuktam, right? And that's so interesting because it's not just praising, it's not a hymn praising the goddess, it's the goddess revealing herself. So that's really interesting. And some people think also it was written by a female rishi. So it's a very significant hymn, right? I'll just, from a translation by June McDaniel, I'll just read just one paragraph. We've discussed this hymn before, right? Now the goddess is speaking, the Devi is speaking. I have created all worlds at my will without being urged by any higher being. I've done everything. I'm the doer. I've done everything, and nobody's encouraged me to do it. Now, there's nobody above me telling me I'm not anyone's Shakti. Usually we think of a Devi as the servant or energy or power of a male deity. There's nothing. I'm the highest thing. I'm doing everything, and nobody above me is making me do it. So that opening statement. This is a big Vedic, a big Shakta win in the Vedas, right? I have created all worlds at my will, without being urged by any higher being, and I dwell within them. I've created this world, and I dwell within them. Right? I permeate the earth and the heaven, and all created entities with my greatness, and dwell in them as eternal and infinite consciousness. Now, I don't have the Sanskrit of this verse, but she's a trustworthy translator, right? A scholar in Shaktism. So you leave it like that. So the goddess is there in a big. If you take that verse, maybe it all reveals just this particular verse. This is from the Rig Veda. It's in the Rig Veda, so it's from an important old Veda, right? There's other important goddesses. In our goddess class, in our Hindu goddess class, we had talk on the Hindu goddess, the Vedic goddesses, right? Ones that are mentioned have the most mentions: Prithvi, the earth, Aditi, Vach, Niritri, Rati, Rāgiṇī, and these are very they have the flavor of Vedic goddesses: the night, confusion, the forest, the sun. These are very. They're identified with natural phenomenon, powers of nature, very beautifully, right? And there's also in the then there's Veda and Vedanga. There's things attached to the Vedas that are very close to the Vedas, and there's many goddesses in those. I have ones from the Kataka Griya Sutra. Just mentioned a long list. Because the question is, okay, the goddess is in the Vedas. Is Kali in the Vedas? Because Kali here is not just saying I am the goddess in the Vedas, but Kali is Kali in the Vedas. Is Kali Nilayā throughout does she dwell in the Vedas? And so I think there's one we've discussed the first time Kali is found in Sanskrit literature, is in a Vedic mantra describing her. The name, I can't say that. The word Kali is found as one of the tongues of flames of Agni. Right. So Kali is the dark flame, right? And so it could be that's an early form, and that same name got attributed to a goddess, a later goddess, or independent goddess from that, right? But people have connected because a big theme of Kali iconography is her tongue, right? And so maybe very early on, energetic and fire and tongue and things. That there's people who've claimed that may be a name for Kali. But in this very early text, this Vedanga text, her name specifically mentioned. So there's an example in a long list. Agnim, Somam, Varunam, these are big names of Vedic deities. Agni, fire, Soma, the sun, Varuna, water, right? Brihaspatim, Skandam, Raudram, Vastiputram, Bhagam. This is Kalim, Shastim, Badra Kalim. Kalim and Badra Kalim are both mentioned. So there's an example that Kali in the Vedas. This way of swiping at it, the goddess is in the Vedas, and maybe even the word Kali, maybe even a list as Kali as a Vedic deity is a very early text. So I have actually a whole skipping. I have a whole verses to Aditi and things like that from the Tarva Veda. There's all kinds of things, right? So thus we could say the Vedas mention her, right? That's okay. So she's in the Vedas. She dwells Nilayam. She's in the 4 Vedas, right? But this is claiming that she's the doer of sacrifice. If she's the enjoyer of sacrifice, if she's the doer and enjoyer of the Vedas, right? That she's the source of the Vedas, right? Which means so in the Vedic tradition, and philosophical introspection of the Vedic tradition, we call that Vedanta, right? What is the thing? What does it all come from? Right, so you developed, especially in the Upanishads, we end up with the idea of Brahman, right? That is the from which the Vedas come, right? Which were oriented to. I mean, this is a philosophical section, right? So she's identified, and throughout the Kali-Satma, she's identified with Brahman, right? And so she's a goddess. But so even if you're not looking for Kali's name and a goddess holding a sword and sticking out her tongue, right, and standing on Shiva in the Vedas, right? Maybe that does not exist, right? Maybe we're looking. If we're looking, we'll find it. But we only find it because we're looking, not because it's there sometimes, right? Right. Whatever. She's in the Vedas because the Vedas reveal the truth, and she is the truth. The Vedas come from the divine. She is that divine. It's that. I think this is this cluster of names. I think is showing this. High Shakta conception. All right. I wrote in my notes, is Devi or Kali mentioned in the Vedas? This question is assumed in the view that she is Brahman, the supreme topic of Vedanta, the source of the Vedas, or the highest principle of the Vedas. So the question whether she's in the Vedas, we could ask, I mean, I do ask, is Kali found in the Vedic tradition? Is a goddess even found in the Vedic tradition? In that category of literature or not? It's like it doesn't matter, right? From this view, this extremely high Shakta perspective, right? She's the supreme reality. If the Vedas are true, they're coming from her. And if they reveal any reality, it's her they're revealing. That's true of every religion, of every deity. This is the extreme Mahadevi, the Maha claim of a Mahadevi text. Right. So I think we'll end. This is actually a good place to end. With the goddess as supreme Brahman, supreme everything, the source of everything. So and the next cluster of names moves into the realm of music and beauty and things like this. So actually, Rāgiṇī is not here. Her name is I was excited. Hopefully, Rāgiṇī will be here because the next name is Rāgiṇī. So her name will be there. So thank you for your kind attention. We didn't go too late. Are there any questions or comments?
Maharaj, the Pāshupatas really like the Yajur-Veda.
Yeah.
They get all their Taitiriya mantras
Yeah.
from them. To what extent do the order of names imply some kind of hierarchy?
The names in this text?
In that the Yajur is mentioned first before
Yeah.
ṛk-sāmātharva-nilayā.
That we could only guess, right? I don't. We were looking at this just because we have to assume because there's no grammar in this. It's just a list of names, right? But they're clustered in a certain way and they flow into each other in a certain way, and so we're noticing things. Whether or not what we're noticing was intentional or accidental, we don't know, right? Because I mean, if that's true, I mean, it could be like in Lita Sahasranāma it starts with Shri, right? It starts big, but whether the intentional order of mentioning Yajurveda first, because usually that's not Yajurveda is not mentioned first, right? Yeah. But I think from what we're Swami Bhajanananda and myself were discussing, looking at these verses this afternoon, is that it's a link between the idea of that she's sacrifice and she's the Vedas by using a word that means both sacrifice and the Veda associated with sacrifice. So that's because that happens 2-3 times in these next verses, where this verse connects. We're talking about the Vedas to music and mantras to instruments and to breath. It seems. I mean, maybe it's like I said, divinely accidental, and it shows the beauty of our minds looking for it, and not the original. It just rhymes, and they want to fit up. It could be like that also, but it could be maybe that Yajurveda is important. Right, we always think, Rig Veda is the first, and Krishna identifies with Samaveda as musical, but Yajurveda is where we get all the world of Vedic ritual is strongly Yajurveda for sure, But that's a good question. I don't know, because we can only look for because it's like if they'd meant to do this, it was very successful. When we think of that's really clever how that, but maybe we have no idea we don't know who the author is and why they did it.
So the assumption that the Shukra, Shoni, all those verses that come at the end, the assumption that they're coming at the end because they're more esoteric, that would just be it's not really founded. Well,
it could be because you mentioned there's a couple of names we haven't got to, and we may have to skip in public. I'm not quite sure. They may not be Saturday children talk. There's some more that are meant to be. They may be put at the end for that purpose, right? But it doesn't mean that everything before is extra, or it starts weak and gets really, really deep, because it starts with the word smashan, right? It starts pretty outrageous, right? And that section is outrageous, a different corner of outrageous, right? But you can see right here, this is the most non-outrageous, but it's still an outrageous claim. It's claiming a deity that many people think has nothing to do with the Vedas. It's claiming it's not only is she Vedic, she's not Vedic. The Vedic gets its quality from her. She's the supreme reality, and so if the Vedas are true, it's because of her, not or if she's authentic because she's in the Vedas, which is the way we may think of it like that. So and perhaps, but you're saying.
So when you're talking about the sacrifice,
the
Vedic sacrifice, tangentially, I've heard Catholic Mass referred to as a sacrifice. I've never understood what that means. You explain some of the interreligious connections.
Well, it's the Mass is recreating. Of course, it's doing. I can't speak beyond my ecumenical credentials, right? But from what I understand, right, within at least the Catholic Mass, for instance, right, is understood. It's both what's the term? Reenactment of the Last Supper, and both the Last Supper and the Last Supper, we could say like that, right? So that's the pattern that it follows, right? But because it's considered, it's not just a joint. We say it's seen as this is the holy meal that we eat together, and it seems like very early strata of the early church, the joint eating of the meal was the central ritual act, community ritual act, right? But the idea of a sacrifice also is the symbolic meaning of the Last Supper is on top of that is symbolic meaning of the death and resurrection of Jesus, right? Not only that is also patterned on that, and that is also has a flavor of ancient Jewish sacrifice, right? Where there is an animal sacrificed, and the blood of that animal then purifies that by satisfying that ritual requirement of sacrifice, right? One is made clean one's sins are forgiven by blood offerings, right? And so we sometimes think, oh, this is a sacrifice. We take it now very symbolically, but I think it can be taken quite strongly that this was a human sacrifice that ended the need of the Christians claim that this is the ended for the need of this sacrifice, but it's still done every time, right? It's not that it's still, of course, done in remembrance of him. It's remembered, but it's reenacted, right? The blood and flesh are again offered, right? So there seems to be a this type of ancient. I mean, we have to remember it is not, of course, there's always exceptions. If you make a big, bold, broad religious statement, there's going to be exceptions. But ancient religion is sacrificial all over the place, right? So it's like, and including, I mean, not only ours, I mean, now we're sacrificing, chocolates and things like this, right? Or an occasional banana, a cucumber when we want to be dramatic, but usually it's just chocolates and stuff like that, right? Right, yeah. But from our side, from our corner of the sacrificial world, right? There's within the Kali, within all over Hinduism, still many places, it's still animal and blood sacrifice tradition, right? Vedic tradition was primarily that, it seems, right? Although that's no longer everywhere the norm, and we appreciate this by our temperament. But similarly, in other Western traditions, we're also profoundly sacrificial, right? And now it's become more symbolic. The ritual is enacted without the need for. Of course, in Christianity, it's a sacrifice to replace another sacrifice, and of course, with the loss of the temple, right? The Jewish cult of sacrifice ended, right? And so some people, if the temple's reestablished, will the sacrifice continue? That's a major discussion amongst the rabbis right now.
The mass that enacts the Last Supper, Supper itself was the Passover. Commemorates another.
We mentioned it's mimicking the Last Supper meal, which has overlaid even the Last Supper. This is my body, which would be given for you. This is my blood. So even the Last Supper meal takes on a very sacrificial temple sacrifice meaning. So it's interesting for sure,
Well, because I've always found the connection, like here you said you're offering chocolate and fruit, but there it's crackers.
Yeah. So we can think. Some people think about this. Oh, this is our prasadam. Yeah. This is their prasadam, right? But I mean, if we were to take like I said, once a year we chop a cucumber for drama like that. We're not. This. We're not holding up every piece of chocolate as if it's a goat or something like this, right? It's just we just do it a little differently. So it loses some of the drama of it, right? But it is. I mean, sometimes when I'm distributing prasad to people who coming from the outside for the first time, or Christians who come on a school outing to a temple or something like that, and we distribute it. So if you're interested, this is food. It's sacramental food. And I think it's similar to it's not exactly similar, but it's the closest we get to it perhaps in if they come from a liturgical and high ritual tradition. This is something like the Eucharist or something. We treat it that respectfully, So okay, some take it, some, no, don't let me touch that thing, Other people, they take it very respectfully. They understand something like that, It's closer to that than to most things that in a shared religious world, We have an idea of sanctified substances that get transformed by ritual offering, and then get taken in a way that's purifying and transformative, and even mystical, in a mystical way. So prasad serves that purpose, Yeah.
Lord,
Yeah.
what is your view on the take that just as horses were sacrificed in the Ashram in the Vedic context, cattle and calves and all?
Yeah. What about it?
To what extent is that claim that cows are sacrificed in the Vedas granted by the Vedas?
It says that in old texts like that, but that hasn't been done in a very, very, very long time. The times have changed, right? And so the texts themselves describe the times changing and different things changing. And so historically, that could be answered historically, academically on what changed and like this, and but that's not a satisfying answer. I mean, that's an answer I can give, and we've done some research on that. I've read research on that. There's people who do research on that. That's not me. It's like to say I read. That's not the same as doing your own research. This is reading scholars who've done research on this, which is very interesting for sure and controversial, right? And so you can see it's still the remnants of ancient culture is sacrificial. That's why I still hold my statement. Ancient culture is sacrificial, right? And many schools, many sects of Hinduism have their own ways of understanding why that's changed or why it should have changed, or maybe it never existed. They try to read like that, right? And so there's all kinds of views. Oh, in Kali Yuga, it's not allowed. It no longer has function, and there's different things like that. I think the times just changed, right? And tastes have changed, right? And there's history behind, and also the different views of the value of different animals and things like that has changed over time. It seems, But I'm not going to make a bold statement because I wasn't there, right? I could say a majority of scholarly consensus may be this. Traditional understandings may be this and like this, right? I think whatever it may be in ancient Vedic texts, though it's not that those Vedic sacrifices, no Vedic sacrifices are still done. What I mentioned, have you seen a big Vedic sacrifice? You raised your hand. I also attended some really wonderful Vedic sacrifices that were not Vedic sacrifices. They were modern rituals with some hymns being chanted by a bunch of Brahmin priests, right? Vedic sacrifices are almost not done. There was like a horse sacrifice without the sacrifice of a horse. Soma sacrifice was done by who's that Sanskrit scholar from Berkeley, the previous generation, Fritz, or what's his Fritz Stahl, right? A very famous Sanskritist from UC Berkeley in the previous yuga, right? Yeah, sorry. I mean late Kali Yuga. Sorry. Yeah, we did. We came from the same school, so we have different yuga, same sacrificial arena. So he helped. He found a really advanced, a very traditional village in South India that was most likely to still be able to do a Vedic sacrifice, right? And so they perform. And it's available. You can Google it, on YouTube and like that. It's really interesting to see how a actual Vedic sacrifice, but even the Western scholars are telling these traditional pundits what to do, because this hasn't been done in hundreds of years, right? They're the family that still know all the mantras, but the ritual actions, the Western scholars are telling, no, you're supposed to do this first. And what about this? And your wife has to sit there, according to this text. So they did it. It was really interesting. But the thing is, none of these have been done for a long time, right? So whatever used to be done is what used to be done. Whatever is being done now is being done now. Right? That's how I view it. Of course, there's political issues and sectarian issues about this view. This word is translated this, and that comes from a need that the Vedas have to be never been changed, never contradict each other. And that's and if you need that to happen, you come up with ways to make that happen, right? And so maybe that's not a burning need in that's not so important in my spiritual aspiration. For some people, it is. Some people, that could be a great challenge if they found something in the Vedas that didn't agree with their religious view, right? Or a changed religious view. But everything changes.
Even early on,
yeah.
By the early Upanishads,
Yeah.
mentioned
Yeah.
sacrifice all done internally.
Yeah. So you can see even so there's an internal Vedic understanding. Yeah, that's a good point. There's a way of interpreting the Vedas from the Vedas, right? That's an old method, right? You find the interpretation of controversialism in the Vedas within the Vedas themselves. So the Vedas themselves reveal, without any external outside scholarship or history, that with the Brahmanas, with the Aranyakas, and then the Upanishads, already the rituals are being left behind. The external rituals are being left behind, are being interpreted to represent spiritual realities, maybe states of meditation. So it gets so now in the Aranyakas already you have philosophical contemplation. The sacrifice is still being done, whatever is being sacrificed, what is being done, but it's being given spiritual correlation. This means this. When we sacrifice this, this means this, right? Rather than just to get something from the gods or something, right? But then the Upanishads, if that means that, you can have that without the sacrifice. And now you can do everything internally through meditation. If by sacrifice, Brahman is to be known, then once you know Brahman, that is sacrifice. You don't need another sacrifice. So you could see even within the Vedas, there's a developing understanding and changing. Yeah. Yes.
So, did the tantric rituals take the place of the Vedic rituals, or
they can for sure. For sure.
They kind of mirrored?
Yeah. Well,
They had their own deities.
yeah. So it's one thing that could be said that from by tantric rituals, and tantra is a complicated. The title is complicated to what you mean by this, right? But if we think of a self-understood tradition with its own literature and self-identity, at a certain point, those texts are revealed, and what they claim is the tantras, the Tantra scriptures. Usually, it's like Shiva talking to Parvati, or Parvati talking to Shiva, or Narayana talking to Narada or to Lakshmi. These like that. So they're already a claim of divine authorship, even though it's not they're obviously later texts. They're self-understood later texts, right? Right. So you still get authority minus antiquity, and the Vedas, the authority comes from the antiquity, right? So the Tantras, their authority comes from their novelty, which is a very interesting. They don't claim to be old; they claim to be new. That Shiva has revealed, because this is Kali Yuga, and because the Vedic mantras don't work, right? Because it's like say Om Agni Le Purohitam, and nothing bursts into flames. So what do we do now? We go Agni Le Purohitam, and then we light the fire, right? The word Agni should light the fire, right? That's how. I mean, whether that really happened, that's what it says happened. You say Agni, and the fire is lit. Right now we go Agni and we use a Bic lighter or match or whatever to light it, right? So the fact that our mantras, who has the power, the mantras are gone, the power mantras are gone, the knowledge of, like you see, one big sacrifice is done, and even the most qualified, traditional, knowledgeable Sanskrit-speaking Brahmin families in South India had missing parts of it, right? So the rituals aren't possible, right? So if that's the case, Lord Shiva out of his mercy, or Narayana out of his mercy, or the Divine Mother Kali out of her mercy, right, revealed for us poor people in this age a new method where you don't need a 5-day complicated, extremely expensive sacrifice. You can draw a yantra and move 4 corners of sand and throw it over your shoulder and do this and throw it like that and do the whole thing in 15-20 minutes. Right, and instead of doing Purusha Shuktam, Shri Shuktam, or 11 Rudrams, 11 Havins with 11 Pandits doing 11 Rudrams, which is cool. Have you ever seen it done? It's something. Happened at the Sanatana Dharma Temple here some years ago. I think recently it even happened. We went to the first one, and it happens often now. It's awesome, right? We can just chant Om Namah Shivaya Swaha, Om Namah Shivaya Swaha, Om Namah Shivaya Swaha, right? Because that's the same as chanting the Rudram, right? So that's the claim of the modern time. So that's a tantric puja, right? So it's been, can't say replaced. It says that appropriate for the age by the mercy of Lord Shiva or Lord Narayan, right? A new revelation for this age has happened. That's the claim. That's that's a version of the claim. I can't say that's not all tantras say that. Not all tantrics believe that, but that's a big move. Like you look at some of the top 10 famous tantras that we can get online or on our bookshelf. They always start with Shiva describing, like it says, anybody who's been married by Vedic mantras, you're not married, right? That's I think in Mahanirvana Tantra or something like that, it says like that, right? You're not married because Vedic mantras have no power, right? And there's nobody to do, and therefore you're not married. In which case your children are illegitimate, and your ancestors will go to hell, right? You're married by Shaiva Siddhanta tantric mantras, right? So therefore, I've given these mantras for you to get married. And all of you who've been married, all of you may have had probably walked around a fire. That's all tantric puja, not a Vedic puja. We call it a Vedic puja. It has a few remnants from the Vedas, like we chant a few things like this, right? But anyway, so it's interesting for sure. That's a move of the modern. It's also a way of explaining what's changed. How did it change, right? So you have to think from what we see in the Vedas like that, and then we see in our modern, even recent or even contemporary version. It seems to be different, and there's a reason, a self-understood reason what changed. It's by the mercy of the Lord that even in this age, right? Because it's like if you take the Yuga tradition seriously, there's no Vedic mantras in Kali Yuga, right? There's no Gayatri in Kali Yuga. There's no Shalagram in Kali Yuga. There's no temples in Kali Yuga, right? There's no clean water in Kali Yuga. There's no pure ghee in Kali Yuga, right? So, I mean, that's the claim, but here we are in a beautiful temple, right? With Shalagrams, chanting God. It's like, because this is the mercy of that. It seems that the Lord or the sages or the traditional need, the tradition finding the need itself to still have a profound, deep, transforming, loving religion, right? By the sages, great, the modern rishis, the Vedas revealed by ancient rishis, Thakur, Vivekananda are modern rishis, right? Our gurus are modern rishis, so it continues, the tradition continues. But it will be, anyways, yeah, so with that, we'll leave it there. If I say, I realize all these, everything I'm saying, I go, uh-oh. All these things, I have to be careful about everything I say. Yeah. These are all dangerous, crazy talk. So, Jai Ma. Okay, and also, there's a lot of people here waiting for Arati, which is not mentioned in the Vedas. All right. Oh my goodness, look at all these flowers. This is spectacular. Ma didn't get any hibiscus today. She got with her. Yeah, I like our new method of sacrifice. That hopefully Ma gets very nice things, and hopefully she'll leave something as remnants for everyone. Very nice sweets have come. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om Om Gణപതി Vāmahe Kalindarina Parasravashanam Yisrājam Ramanam Brahmanasparam Sindhanutavishwarakaranam Om Shri Mahagణപതये Namaha Lakshminarayanadyam Namaha Umamaheshwaradyam Namaha Hiranyagarbhavyam Sundarāvyam Shirvatavyam Shilvatavyam Namaha Gramagritavyam Namaha Vasudatavyam Sarvesvabhyam Devi Virundaranganam Varenyam Vararam Shivam Narayanam Namaskritya Sarva Karmanikare Mangalam Gurudeva Devimatrikya Mangalam Mangalam Bhakta Vrindevya Sarva Lokaya Mangalam Om Aimatva Sattam Shuryami Swaha Om Hrim Vida Sattam Shuryami Swaha Om Klim Shiva Sattam Shuryami Swaha Om Hrim Klim Sarva Sattam Shuryami Swaha Vishnu 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 Om Dar Vishnu Paramam Param Sada Pashanti Sudhiva Shakshuradatam Om Abhavi Vitrava Sarvavastam Gitopiva Japri Pundari Kaksham Sabhaya Bhayandra Suchihi Sri Vishnu Sri Vishnu Sri Vishnu Om Bametasmai Om Hum Yang Rang Baushata Vang Hring Om Gring 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 Iram Sukurvijam Gring Zimadakshana Kalgaya Devi Arzevam Darshayami Namaha Om Kli Mahakavye Namaha. No. Om Yantrājāya Vimhāya Yantrāya Dhīmahi Tanno Yantra Prachodayat. Om Dīpāya Om Dīpāya Om Vam Hring 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 Iram Panchadīpam Hring Simadakshana Kalga Arsem Darshayami Namaha. Dakshina Kali ki Jai! Jai Ma Bhagavata Dakshina Kali ki Jai! Jai Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa Deva ki Jai! Jai Sri Sharda Devi ki Jai! Gacharya Swami Vivekananda Maharaji ki Jai! Jai Purna Tirtharakyaneshwar Dham ki Jai! Parvati Pataye Har Har Mahadev.
You're hired. I'm gonna get fired.
Kali Kali Mahakali Kali ke Parameshwari Sarvantare Narayani Namostute. Chamundaye Kali Kali
Dakshineshwari Dakshina Kali ki. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. कृष्ण परमहंस देव की।
कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। भवतापं विनाशिन्य आनन्दघनमूर्तये कृष्णभक्तिप्रदायिन्यै पादस्तुभ्यं नमो नमः। वनमाली वासुदेवा जगन्मोहन राधारमणा। वनमाली वासुदेवा वनमाली वासुदेवा जगन्मोहन राधारमणा। जगन्मोहन राधारमणा। जगन्मोहन राधारमणा। शशिवदना सरसिजनयना जगन्मोहन राधारमणा। सरसिजनयना जगन्मोहन राधारमणा। शशिवदना सरसिजनयना जगन्मोहन राधारमणा। शशिवदना सरसिजनयना जगन्मोहन राधारमणा। वनमाली वासुदेवा जगन्मोहन राधारमणा। वनमाली वासुदेवा जगन्मोहन राधारमणा। जगन्मोहन राधारमणा। जगन्मोहन राधारमणा। जगन्मोहन राधारमणा। शशिवदना सरसिजनयना जगन्मोहन राधारमणा। जगन्मोहन राधा 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 राधारमणा। राधा राधा राधारमणा। श्री राधा राधा राधारमणा। श्री राधा राधा राधारमणा। श्री राधा राधा राधारमणा। श्री राधा राधा राधारमणा। शशिवदना सरसिजनयना जगन्मोहन राधारमणा। शशिवदना सरसिजनयना जगन्मोहन राधारमणा। शशिवदना सरसिजनयना जगन्मोहन राधा। वनमाली वासुदेवा जगन्मोहन राधारमणा। वनमाली वासुदेवा जगन्मोहन राधारमणा। जगन्मोहन राधारमणा। जगन्मोहन राधा जगन्मोहन राधारमणा। सरसिजनयना राधारमणा। सरसिजनयना राधारमणा। 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 हरे रघुवीरा परम पवित्रा हरे रघुवीरा परम पवित्रा हरे रघुवीरा परम पवित्रा राघवा राजीव नेत्रा राघवा राजीव नेत्रा हरे रघुवीरा परम पवित्रा हरे रघुवीरा परम पवित्रा राघवा राजीव नेत्रा राघवा राजीव नेत्रा हरे रघुवीरा परम पवित्रा हरे रघुवीरा परम पवित्रा राघवा राजीव नेत्रा राघवा राजीव नेत्रा राघवा हरे रघुवीरा परम पवित्रा हरे रघुवीरा परम
Mangala-mangalaye Shive Sarvārtha-sādhike Sharanye Trambake Gauri Narayani Namaste Shri-Siddhi-Nāthanam Shakti-bhūti Sanatani Gunāśraye Gunāmaye Narayani Namaste Shranāgata-lināta Pavitra-parāyaṇī Sarvasya-hri-hare Narayani Namaste Jaya Narayani Namaste Jaya Narayani Namaste Jaya Narayani Namaste Jaya Narayani Namaste Jai Mahamai ki Jai Jai Bhagavanti Ramakrishna Deva ki Jai Jai Swami Maharaj ki Jai Jai Ma Dakshineshwari Bhavatarini Dakshina Kālī ki Jai.
Thank you. I'll try the holy That's it. That's very cool. What is that?
It's rock dish.
Okay.
So that's why I wear the after.
He thinks of it.
Oh, so good.
Oh, I don't know that one. I'll have to find that recording.
It just goes.
Is that a recording on YouTube?
That's really.
I've heard Logan on it.
Yes. But it's so simple. The sweetness.
Yeah, it's nice.
Ooh, that's good. That's tasty.
Yeah, it's a nice little tune.